Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending our CID webinar called Mastering E&O Insurance Strategies, Trends, and Success Stories. This is going to be a great webinar. Your instructor today will be Lisa Scranton. She's with USLI and brings a lot of knowledge on E&O insurance. My name is Anae Agostini. I'm CEO of CID Insurance. And also here we have Lexi Johnson, who's our professional liability underwriter at CID, and Jacob Cole, our marketing coordinator with CID. So let's get started. Okay, logistics first. Everyone will be muted. You'll be able to hear but not speak, but your voice is really important to us. So please put your questions in the chat room. Type them in at any point throughout the webinar, and we'll stop and answer them for you. And your voice is also important for our short survey that will appear after the webinar, because we want your feedback. So without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to Lisa.
Thank you so much, Anae. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this webinar focusing on professional liability errors and omissions insurance. So here's our agenda. We will be covering the state of the marketplace in regards to E&O insurance, talking about what the demand is for E&O, how to productively gather the right information from the consultant in order to get terms, what trends we are currently seeing, as well as some interesting statistics related to these trends, some lawsuits that are very informative case studies on what kinds of E&O claims that we see, and then a nice meet and greet with Lexi Johnson, your primary contact at CID for these submissions. So let's talk about what's happening now in the errors and omissions marketplace. The challenge with E&O claims is that they often take a long time to play out. And we'll see evidence of this in the case studies later on in the presentation. I've been following certain claims for years and years before they finally close. So insurance carriers always need to be tweaking their prices to match up with these long-term trends, loss trends, which means that they're adjusting and readjusting their rates constantly. So this is happening in today's marketplace and will continue to happen going forward. As more businesses try to become more of a one-stop shop with various service offerings, they're finding that their basic business owner's package carrier doesn't want to start taking on the professional exposure on top of that package. And they've actually started clearly excluding some types of consulting services. So this is leading many business owners who have carried business owner's package for a long time to now have to seek a separate professional liability E&O policy for these exposure gaps. Another point is that agents are getting more and more educated and able to clearly advise their insureds that they're not fully covered with just GL or a BOP policy, a business owner's package policy. And this is also leading to an uptick in those seeking professional quotes in today's marketplace. Now, our big one, social inflation. This is a huge concern for insurance carriers, and they have to adjust their rates accordingly. So you all may have heard about these nuclear verdicts where demand amounts that used to be reasonable are now exceeding multi-millions. This is forcing carriers to stop writing in some states, or if they stay, stop writing high claims classes or having to bump premiums to account for these future nuclear verdicts. Another point is that we've become even more of a litigious society, and it's getting to be common knowledge that no matter the size of your business, you still need professional insurance. It's no longer just for the big fish. So due to the frequency and severity of claims, current insureds who may have small professional coverage sublimits on their business owner's package are now looking for increased limits that aren't going to be available on their current BOP policy. So again, they will end up seeking professional terms in a separate policy. Now, contracts. The standard cookie cutter contracts are now frequently including professional liability requirements. Businesses that could previously work with a client without professional coverage now have to get it secured for them to have future projects and profits with these businesses. Before, it used to be a basic general liability requirement, and now we're seeing professional liability popping up as well. The next change is more and more online quoting portals and ones that are easier to get terms. This is a supply keeping up with the demand, and we've even done that with our USLI quoting portal too, to make it faster and easier for you to use. Statistics. If you take a look at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, you'll see an increase in job openings in many fields, most of which are service-based providers than manufacturing companies. And these service-based companies are the ones that are needing the E&O. So as there's an increase in jobs, there's an increase in demand. Now, specific to allied healthcare related E&O, life expectancies are longer, which means more caretakers and healthcare professionals are in demand. Adult children are putting the care of their elderly parents in healthcare workers' hands, and they have very high expectations for the quality and quantity of caretakers available to them. So this increase in workforce leads directly to an increase in a coverage demand. And in terms of tech and cyber E&O marketplaces, they've really changed drastically over the last few years. The global pandemic gave rise to an increase in professionals, especially IT professionals, as everyone's use of technology broadened. So we did see a spike in ransomware claims, and it caused insurance carriers to scramble, pull out of classes, and increase rates. But now everything's starting to level off a little bit, and readjustments are being made, and most of the time that means lower premiums for technology E&O. So who needs this coverage? Every professional that performs the service needs errors and omissions coverage. Any profession that could cause a client a financial loss of some sort needs to protect themselves with coverage. When you're looking at your commercial insureds with GL, every single one of them needs E&O if they interact, plan, consult, design, or advise anything between the professional and their client. These industries on the slide that you see are the main ones that we focus on, but keep in mind, within all of these bullet pointed industries, there are over 250 types of consultants that we can contemplate at USLI. So here's how USLI can help. We can offer up to $5 million in professional errors and omission limits. However, the usual request is for $1 million miscellaneous E&O. We have the ability to add by endorsement, first and third party cyber coverage, depending on the class. We can package the professional liability with general liability or with the business owner's package, which will include the general liability and business personal property, along with all of your standard BOP coverages. To the GL, we can add hired and non-owned auto. And while our GL typically goes out at 1 million, 2 million limits, and remember, our limits are separate from our professional liability limits. We do also have the ability to provide excess terms over the general liability and the hired and non-owned auto for an additional 5 million limits on top. We can customize our classification language to meet your client's needs. For example, we've written a pickle consultant, a bonsai tree consultant, and a beehive consultant. And obviously these are all classes that the underwriter had to manually customize in order to send terms out, because as you can imagine, these are not types of consultants that we will typically see. So there is a large population of policy holders who buy E&O insurance because they can't work the next day if they don't have it. So as I mentioned before, many contracts are now making this coverage standard policy, and they're requiring the professionals to have very high limits, 5 million at times. We have higher limits We have waiver of subrogation wording, primary and non-contributory wording, blanket and scheduled additional insureds, and these are all enhancements that we commonly see on these contracts. So most of the day, I spend looking through submission after submission or answering emails. Can USLI write this? Can USLI consider this? So how does one extract the right information from the customer to help get those terms? So what does your conversation look like with your customer? Here are the basic questions I look into. First off, if you call yourself a consultant or even a management consultant, that can be too vague for us. What is their certification or licensing in? Who are their clients? If their clients are schools, I can now focus my underwriting to the educational and academic consultants. While say their clients are national forests and parks, I'm headed towards more of an ecological or horticultural consultant. So who they work for is just as telling as who they are as consultants. Keep in mind, we will need revenues based on a 12-month estimate, and that's gross receipts. And this includes startups. So, for startups, we ask for their best estimate, their best guess for the first 12 months of the business. This is one of our rating factors, so it's important to have it accurate. And so is the number of people on staff, including independent contractors. So our smaller micro-pro errors and emissions and micro-tech errors and emissions products always take into account the head count to rate. So accuracy is important there. So we're going to move on to some of our trending classes that we want to highlight. The first class is the coaching service, and we define this as being very similar to a management consultant, but coaches generally provide advice to executives or private individuals to help them achieve their professional and personal goals. They might act as a mentor or a motivator to help their clients reduce stress, manage their time more efficiently, and improve their general attitude. There are some great statistics to sell this class. It is a $2.8 billion industry, and the number of coaches increased in 1 year by 57,391. At USLI, in 90 days, we saw 335 coaching submissions just in 3 months. And this is kind of an interesting fact I found. An average human makes 773,618 decisions in their lifetime and will regret over 143,000 of them. So this is going to work both ways in your marketing efforts, right? Coaches will be asked to help make some of those 700 plus, 100,000 plus decisions. There's your statistics showing the demand for coaches. And then if the coach gives the wrong advice and becomes one of the 143,000 plus decisions that they regret, that's where E&O comes into play and covers the coaches for their bad advice. And I just want to mention that coaching services is one of the easiest classes to quote over the phone or online. So keep that in mind when you're submitting to us.
Lisa?
Yes.
Before you go on to the next slide, we have a question.
Sure.
Do you see it in the
chat
box?
Let me see. Question is correct statement there. So that's a pretty broad question for me to be able to answer with the yes and no. And it also depends on, which carriers Lexi is connecting to. But yes, the certification is, a contract-based situation. So absolutely, that is one reason to get it. Intellectual related services. Yes, we think of them as intellectual related services, but we do contemplate both blue collar and white collar risks as well. So it's not always that they have to have a licensing or a certain doctorate or PhD or something. Professional liability can vary a lot. For example, for contracts, we see a lot of cleaning services needing professional liability for contracts, and we don't see if the cleaners or the staff have certain types of background. So it can work it can be for both. It can be for both. In general. Yes, third-party financial loss. That's what it's all about in terms of E&O, absolutely. Perform independently. I think what you mean by performed independently is that they're hired as independent contractors versus employees. And yes, in terms of USLI, we are targeting those that are independent businesses, or they're contracted as 1099 independent contractors, because if they are employed, most of the time they are covered already by that particular business's errors and omissions. So hopefully that answers that question. If not, please let me know or clarify further. Okay, so I am going to, training specialist is our next trending class. They provide classroom instruction and presentation on how to perform certain functions to improve skills and knowledge. And this can include the CE courses that everybody needs to take, this continuing education courses. This also has great selling statistics as well. There are over 42,000 training specialists in the US. The Bureau of Labor Statistics show 35,000 new training specialist job openings each year. And this is specific to you guys in California. Training specialists in Texas, California, New York, Florida, and Ohio have the highest employment levels. And when I say training specialists, this can include so many different industries: education, insurance, real estate, technical skills, computer skills, career skills, human resource. So really we see all sorts of training types. In 90 days, USLI reviewed 300 training specialist submissions. And one thing that I want to mention that really is relevant marketing and a selling tool for any class is that 2 hours with a lawyer costs more than one policy covering an entire year of lawyers and legal support during a lawsuit. And you're going to see in the upcoming case studies how expensive the defense costs alone can be in these cases. All right, next is our staffing services. This includes permanent, temporary, executive search, and recruitment services. And we often see them also conducting interviews and performing background checks as well. So $161 billion industry in the US, and the US is actually one of the leading countries in the global staffing industry. The staffing industry fills about 16 million positions a year. And to us, that means 16 million potential for errors. 4 out of the 5 top occupation sectors, and that's industrial, office, managerial, and IT, use staffing agencies to fill positions. And these are the types of agencies we're looking to quote. And in 1 year, 2021, there are about 25,000 staffing agencies in the US. So the demand is certainly there. Paralegals, this is our final trending class that I want to bring up today. Paralegals are hired to support the work of the lawyers and law firms during discovery for cases and other research that needs to be done. And just please keep in mind, we're not talking about the lawyers and the law firm itself, but we're talking about the contracted, independently contracted paralegals that are supporting these lawyers. So the US News and World Report's 2023 100 Best Jobs in America included paralegals, with projected job openings at 43,000 a year. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics projects a 14% increase in this job market, which is much higher than average. We have about 300,000 paralegals currently employed in the US. And the growth has to not only has to do with the litigious nature of our society, but because law firms are trying to reduce their costs while increasing efficiency. So the law firms, just like our court systems, are still dealing with this huge backlog of cases that occurred when courts had to shut down because of COVID. Because paralegals bill much lower rates than attorneys, law firms are using them and able to control legal costs for their clients and their own overhead by using paralegals more. In fact, more firms are turning to paralegals to help on cases over their entry-level lawyers. And this demand is making for a great trending class right now. Okay, so here's some interesting stories I'm going to share with you. These are case studies. These are actual lawsuits that USLI has been involved with. So I'm just going to kind of tell you the narrative here. So our insured is an interior designer who was hired by a couple to work on their Florida condo. So this was their vacation residence, their second home. So this claim started when our insured resigned and terminated his contract with the couple because he just couldn't handle working with them, particularly the wife, who made the process so difficult, including making up to 13 change requests in one day. So our insured had had enough and left the project when it was almost 90% complete. So you can imagine how fed up our insured had to be to quit this late in the game. So the day after he quit, the couple drops a $180,000 lawsuit. And this case has been very hard and emotional for our insured. He's taking it very personally, especially since his work is done through word of mouth, and he's very proud of this business that he built up. He did have a very well-written contract, which helped our legal team a lot, but like all E&O claims, it was drawn out with demand amounts constantly changing, and from $180,000 in demand, it suddenly became $980,000. The plaintiff is said to have hired a new interior designer and undid much of what our insured had already completed, and hence was asking for $1 million or close to $1 million to pay for all of these changes. So they removed the stucco that had just been put up in the hallway. They changed the wall covering that was just put up. Master bedroom cabinets were taken down and replaced with new cabinets of the same design. There was a complete overhaul, wall finishes, the master bathroom, plumbing fixtures in the office bathroom. This is after 90% of the project was already done. So our legal team pulled in expert witnesses who observed that the insured did his work properly, had a strong contract system in place, and overall observed that the insured is a well-organized, hardworking designer with a very strong reputation in this industry. So this could be very helpful in court. But even with this backing, we just needed to stop this claim from dragging out. So after 3 years, we settled for $250,000. But take a look at those legal fees, $136,490. Just that alone, just the legal fees alone, is an easy way to sell a business owner an errors and omissions policy. The next case study is about a landscape architect. So while we don't write A&E here at USLI, we do make an exception in the area of landscape architectural design. So our insured is a landscape architect who was working for a city on a beachside trail project, and this was in 2013. And after it was completed, these cracks began to appear on the trail. The insured was the prime consultant for the city for the trail project. So the city sent a request for the construction company and our insured to please fix these cracks. So a forensic engineer was hired and determined the cause of the cracks. The report found that the workers added too much water to the concrete mix. So the concrete powder water mixture was off, which really should have nothing to do with our insured, right? Because our insured is just designing it. They're not part of the manual labor portion. Unfortunately, though, our insured was linked to a conversation that told the workers how to mix the concrete. So the concrete guys are saying, it's not our fault, it's the insured's fault, but all these other factors started to appear. The design that our insured called for needed joints every 8 feet, but they were put in every 40 feet against the design specifications, but no one caught this during the construction. Our insured also signed off on the concrete plans themselves instead of letting an engineer do so because he was already over budget and he couldn't afford to pay the engineer. Even though the cracks were cosmetic, the demand amount started at $880,000, but then quickly went to a full $1 million to replace the whole walkway. Now, this lawsuit included our insured, the concrete company, the general contractors of the design. Many parties were involved. So USLI hired a private investigator to watch the trail during a big event because it was said that even though it was pedestrian only, people had seen vehicles going on this trail, which might have been the reason the cracks were formed. So the private investigator found nothing at the event, but heard from a city employee confirming that he uses a bobcat weighing over 6,000 pounds to sweep the sand on the walkway as part of his regular maintenance. And this, again, is a walkway only intended for pedestrians. So we found another factor lowering our insured's percentage of liability. In the middle of this, a car accident happens that demolishes part of the trail, revealing more of the inner structure. This reveals that the general contractor did not comply with many of the original plans. So now our insured is even less liable. So the liability was spread out. We ended up paying $367,500 on behalf of our insured, and the rest was paid out by the other parties involved to make a complete settlement amount of $750,000. But this case study shows you how complex one lawsuit can be, especially when there are multiple parties involved and a project that involves the general public or public space. Our insured was really one domino of many that caused the reaction, but it could have cost him close to $700,000 of his own money if you add the legal fees and indemnity that that USLI ended up paying. And our final case study, we're going to talk about technology E&O. So our insured was a technology expert, and they're responsible for e-discovery service, which is really digital investigation of emails and business correspondences that they use for court cases. So this is part of a discovery process in many cases now, since there's not really a paper trail anymore, there's more of an email trail. So the plaintiff is alleging that our insured withheld evidence from the prosecutor's office, which impacted the investigation of the lawsuit they were working on, and that our insured made their client, who was on trial, the superintendent, look really bad in the case. So what happened is that incriminating information came from an IP address that couldn't be guaranteed to be accurate. And this is not just according to our insured, but also according to Microsoft. So according to the insured, it wasn't super strong evidence for the case. However, the plaintiff is saying that our insured led them to believe it was a guaranteed connection to the information and the IP address, and that other information that could have really helped the case was never reported to them. So this lawsuit is based on another lawsuit that's not going well for the plaintiff's law firm and the superintendent they're representing. Our insured's argument is that the information was not purposely withheld and that the prosecutor had conducted its own separate investigation and didn't base its case solely on the evidence in question. The prosecutor in the other case was aware of the full version of potentially incriminating email chains. So this is a situation where there are files and files and files of information, and our insured is making a call of what is strong evidence and what is not necessary to put in his report. But because this other case is going so poorly, there's a lot of finger pointing starting at our insured. And after 6 years, this case is still not closed. Okay, so this is just a quick reminder that we have a phone quoting option where you can call in with information you've gathered to see if you can get a quote sent to you. You will be talking with the USLI underwriter, and when terms are generated, they will be sent to your office and CID simultaneously. If USLI cannot quote the risk, you'll be transferred back to CID for them to help find a different market. We're not going to do a live demo today, but please keep in mind that CID has demos recording on their website if you're interested in listening to how quick and easy they can be. And then in this slide, we just show some of the classes that we can consider and quote over the phone. So now I'm going to pass it back to Jacob and Lexi.
slide.
So thank you so much, Lisa. Here is a snapshot of some of our target classes. This is just a very short list, but gives you an idea what we can write here at CID. We can write a variety of classes with allied health, architects and engineers, real estate, lawyers, and the list goes on. We can consider new ventures, risks with claims, or even a lapse in coverage. So if you're currently working on a risk, please send it over. I'd be happy to review it and see what we can do on it. We also have applications on our website at cidinsurance.com. So if you need a specific application, you can grab it from there, complete it, and then send it on over.
Thank you, Lexi, and thank you so much, Lisa. It's great information, really valuable for those of you that are looking to write more E&O, and it does appear that E&O is becoming much more of a contractual coverage needed by a lot of businesses. So thank you for a great webinar. Also, make sure you visit our website. We've got lots of tools for you and upcoming webinars and recorded webinars that you may find valuable on different classes of business, coverages, and even how to build your a successful commercial book. So please take our survey. Make sure you give us some feedback because that's how we get better. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day.